This is networking 225 routing and switching, and we just finished working on the other day sub interfaces. We created a trunk. If you had, for example, a VLAN 20 and 30, we got a couple switches. Between the switches we have a trunk, and if you remember, if VLAN 30 who are on one network want to communicate to a network on VLAN 20, they would have to go through the router and get routed inside the router, and then the information would come back to the correct VLAN. We create sub interfaces. We have to make sure we have no IP address on the physical interface. We do the right encapsulation, put the IP address on it, make sure we mark which VLAN when we do the encapsulation, and then we create a trunk between these two ports. Again, when information moves, when frames move between two switches, we also need a trunk if we want the correct VLAN information to go to the correct VLAN. So if we had a, let's say, a VLAN 30 down here, then these would be able to communicate with the VLAN 30 here. But between VLANs, since they're on different networks, it would have to go through the router. Today we did a lab with the sub interfaces, and now we're working on a lab with multi-layered switches. In there we have switch virtual interfaces. In a multi-layered switch, you can turn on IP routing, and then you can actually create an interface for a VLAN, and then some number of that VLAN, and then assign an IP address. So this trunk between here, you can have multiple VLANs down here, and then if a device needs to talk to a device on another VLAN, it would get switched and then sent back. So the students, they're to create 3 VLANs, and we know each VLAN has to have its own network, so they had at least 3 VLANs, so they had to subnet these addresses so that they would be able to create multiple networks. And each group can do their own. I suggested for the connection up here, they can create a router port here by going into that port and do a no switch port, and then they can apply an IP address. And where they should get that address, they should get it from this network here. So they can set up their own addressing between here. Same thing over here. This network here, they should get an address for here. I use the .1 and 2 here. They'll have to figure out what they can use for these interfaces. The other thing they should set up here, they should set up the management VLAN. And I suggest that they use a 192.168 address. And they need to set that up for their switches. Alright. So this lab will finish on Wednesday, and then do some work on static routes. So they need to be reading chapter 6 also. That's it.